I'm Courtney Ingham, and I am a Western tropical astrologer. I offer weekly astrology reports every Monday featuring the planetary and lunar energies for the week ahead. All times mentioned are in Eastern Standard Time. Becoming a subscriber is free, and all subscribers get additional free content. Becoming a paid subscriber is only $5 a month and helps to support this podcast. Paid subscribers receive discounts off of my readings and other offerings. Enjoy the show. Hello, Astro friends. This is your weekly Astro overview for Monday, July the 24th through Sunday, July 30th. And this week we have some pretty powerful energy that thematically is allowing us to take a deeper dive into what makes us tick and what we need to shed to move forward on our highest path. As always, I'm going to start by talking about the lunar phases for this week. So for this week, we will be in a waxing crescent phase. And this is a time when the moon is a little silver sliver in the sky. It's actually so beautiful. I was gazing at the moon last night around 8 p.m. and it was just so perfectly centered over my house. It was a really beautiful moon to look at. I highly recommend you get out there and look at the moon. I try to do that once every evening myself as a practice. And during this phase, it's a good time to touch back into some of the intentions that you set during the new moon phase and revisit them and stoke that flame, so to speak, as the moon itself is building towards a full moon or completion. We want to give a little more energy towards our intentions and amp that up a bit. And just maybe connect back and charge or recharge that intention. And as I spoke last week, we do start this week on Monday with our moon in Libra. On Tuesday, however, just afternoon, it's going to move into the sign of Scorpio. And this is a really good lunar energy for the overall energies of this week. This is going to put us into an emotional and a sensitive, intuitive state that I believe is going to make us very receptive to the planetary aspects that happen later this week that are really setting us up for big introspection, which I feel is a good word for that Scorpio energy. It's very much the energy of wanting to dive beneath the surface. It's really not satisfied with superficial elements and just, conversation or anything like that. It wants to go deeper. It wants to get to the root. And in fact, Pluto, one of the rulers of Scorpio, actually rules over things beneath the soil, beneath the surface. It rules the roots of plants and things like that. So it is a great time to tune in to what might be coming up as far as your shadow aspects go. This might be presenting in a less than obvious way during this time. A lot of times it can be subconscious, it can be in dreams, it can be nuanced. And just notice what is coming up during this time. But in general, as I mentioned, I do believe that the energies of this Scorpio moon are setting the pace for the entire week and putting us into a space where we can more readily dive beneath the surface. We're going to be more interested in what's making us tick. What else can come up in the Scorpio energy is things that have been considered minor upsets that are lurking below the surface that we maybe haven't really given a whole lot of attention to. And these can be petty things like jealousies, and they come up to be transformed because transformation is a big part of this Scorpio energy. So instead of getting down on yourself, if that is the case for you, remember that it's coming up because it wants this transformation. We have this really big transformation energy all week going on. It really wants you to tune into this. Instead of going to maybe more of a self-pity mode, go to the mode of how can I use this? Why is this here for me? Not the victim mentality that would say, why is this happening to me? But how is this here for me? That really can transform that mindset. And that would be a very good thing to consider doing. It's great energy for digging deep below the surface if there's something that requires you to do some kind of investigation, or maybe to be more obsessive about. You can use this to fuel a fun obsession that you might have. I know obsessions get a bad rap for being bad and negative, but it can be very nice to indulge in this area during the Scorpio moon energy and allow the shadow to bring up what needs to be brought up at this time. And, just know that you're ready to receive whatever that is, to transform it, and see what's here for you, what's here to change, what's here to transform. On Thursday, we will have our moon move into the sign of Sagittarius. This is a great energy to see the big picture, take a more objective view on something, and in fact, this can be very helpful with the planetary energies that I will go into soon for Thursday and Friday. So keep that as a little feather in your hat right now, that there's a lot of great supportive lunar energy for what we will be dealing with. It's a little more on the intense side and will require our objectivity. It's also a great day, Thursday and Friday actually, when we have the moon in Sagittarius, to have fun, plan something fun, maybe plan something that requires us taking a chance or being adventurous. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's very lucky. Sometimes people plan to do something like buy a lottery ticket when they're feeling lucky under the moon in Sagittarius energy. Late Saturday night and on through Sunday, we will have our moon in Capricorn. This is a more ambitious and serious energy, and I feel like a lot of the more serious lunations are happening over the weekend, which might not really coincide well with your weekend plans, but maybe try to put some time aside where you can get things in order, where you can make a plan, where you can think about the future and where you're going and where you want to go. And actually that really does coincide well with some of the planetary energies I'm going to talk to this week. So that could be very helpful. You might naturally already be wanting to make these considerations. It's a great time to be strategic and get things on track. We will have both Mars and Mercury in the sign of Virgo, which can help with organizing and sorting things out that's needed to be sorted out. I can't even tell you how many things I have organized with this energy of having Mars in Virgo. We've got several junk drawers, not just one. We have several junk drawers, and one of them got organized. It's been years since I actually have done that, if I'm to be honest. Moon in Capricorn, it's also a great time to do something very mature, serious, maybe pay the bills or consider what needs to happen to promote your future, your success in the future, that kind of a thing. And maybe even just take on a more ambitious task, something that you've been thinking of that maybe you haven't had quite enough courage or willpower to do. Willpower definitely goes hand in hand with this Capricorn energy. And now we'll move into talking about the planetary aspects for this week. All right, so we've had some really big influxes happen recently. We have Venus gone retrograde as of Sunday. I spoke a bit about that last week. We have the sun that's ingressed into Leo. Venus, by the way, is in Leo too. So the Leo energy is very amped up right now. We also will have Mercury move into the sign of Virgo this week. So those are some of the big planetary influxes that are happening. So be sure to pull your chart out and check those signs to see what big planets or points you may have activated. Now on Tuesday, we're going to have Pluto, which is retrograde and in Capricorn, squaring the North Node in Taurus. And this energy is going to repeat again on Friday as the North Node squares Pluto. So it's sort of a, reverse order of operations, but very similar, the same basic energy. And that is because the nodes are moving in retrograde, as they always do, as well as Pluto. Pluto moves in retrograde, and they are in this square aspect. And when anything squares the North Node, it automatically squares the South Node. If you haven't listened to my podcast that addresses the shift in the nodes, you'll want to listen to that so you can understand that. That's a really big deal, and things going on with the nodes are a really big deal. And when Scorpio is involved, it's an even bigger deal. Scorpio is the most powerful planet. If you look at where you have Scorpio in your chart, that is something that's really asking you to rise and be empowered in that area of your chart. You have access to quite a lot of power and transformation in that area of your chart. So with Pluto squaring the North Nodes, this is going to require us to dissolve a psychological block, potentially, because that's what Pluto can often represent, is our deep psychology, in order for us to move forward on our highest path. And the highest path is what's represented by the nodes. This could come up as us healing generational wounds. That's the energy of what we are in with this square and have been in, and we're continuing to visit and revisit as this energy is coming up for us. What we may notice is that there are a lot of patterns that we've inherited that are really not serving our path forward, and we have the power in this particular aspect to rewrite new patterns, new ways of being that honor our true selves, honor our path forward, honor who we came here to be. A good question to ask with this is, what is holding me back from being who I came here to be? And when we are dealing with Pluto, again, that's subconscious energy. So these aren't going to be things that are necessarily obvious, but we can sort of look at it from an indirect angle and say, wow, if I just separately take the North Node and say, what is my highest spiritual path forward? What did I come here to be? And then we examine, what are the ways that that's been blocked? What's stopping me? That can a lot of times be exactly what brings up those Plutonian shadow aspects that we are dealing with. And it can be things around inherited patterns, inherited viewpoints that says, things like, I'm not good enough to do that. Or, I'm not smart enough. I don't have what it takes. I fail when I try to do things like this. Those are what you're going to have come up. And again, they're not necessarily going to be like right there in your face. They're going to be presented in a very nuanced way. So just be aware of that for this week. So some other questions that you can ask with this energy, since it's such big energy and since it does, the exact square actually repeats itself, is what expressions don't actually serve me? So what things am I doing that isn't actually serving my highest path? Now, again, the nodes have moved to Aries, Libra. Aries is very much an energy that wants us to trust ourselves. It's very instinctual energy. It knows what it wants, and it takes the initiative to go after it, and it asks us to deeply step into our sovereignty, the places where we do not give our power away, and to stop doing things that lead to cycles of disempowerment. And naturally, the South Node energies in Libra, those are going to be ways that we've, acted in more toxic ways as far as relationship goes, ways that have really kind of expired for us, that we're ready to move beyond, that aren't serving us. And that can actually lead you to understand some of the deep subconscious implications that we're dealing with this Pluto square to the nodes, looking at how you can step more into your sovereignty and what needs to go away in order for you to do that at this time. Maybe it's an actual relationship, or maybe it's a way of being that we've had in a relationship, like codependency. It does not mean that relationships are necessarily going to dissolve, but there's absolutely going to be lower ways of being in relationships that will dissolve with the South Node being in Libra at this time. On Thursday, we have Mercury in the sign of Leo conjunct Venus, now retrograde, in the sign of Leo. And this is the energy of becoming aware of some of the Venus retrograde themes that we are currently processing, and making connections with what's coming up and what's changing, and how have we done love. That's a theme of Venus. Our passions, how have we followed our passions in the past, and how is that changing now? So in the energy of the Venus retrograde, we can often have themes from the past come up that are asking us to heal them. And in the sign of Leo, this is like the opportunity we have for advanced self-actualization. So it's almost like by properly aligning ourselves with our heart, with our passion, with our desire, we can get in greater alignment with ourselves. So this is a period of time where we're going to be very introspective. We're not going to be doing things out there with this energy. We're going to be reflective. And Venus represents values, tastes, our material possessions, how we use money or our resources. And these are things that will be coming up during this time for us to reflect upon. So with this Mercury ruling the way that we think about things, our logic, our understanding, we're going to be really thinking about that this week. We're going to be processing deeply these Venus themes that are going to be coming up for us during this retrograde period. Venus goes retrograde every 18 months, but it's in different signs, giving us an opportunity to be reflective of different qualities of Venus. And in Leo, this is the sign of the heart. It's the generous and loyal sign. It's a sign of the lion that serves its pride. It's asking us to deepen into a deeper self-knowing and acting from that point. And Leo is also the sign of romance and love affairs and playful energy. It's a sign of children. So it's a really fun energy. And with Venus there, we're really asking to explore and look at ways of, how have we kept it light and had fun as well? And finding our joy. Have we maybe put that on the back burner and gotten a little too serious? And with this Venus retrograde, we're also looking at this whole new cycle of Venus that will be starting. I'm going to do a podcast on the Venus retrograde to speak more specifically about these energies. Let's move into the next big planetary aspect for this week that is happening on Friday, and it's again involving Mercury and Leo, this time trining the North Node in Aries. And this is a very positive aspect, and this really allows us to align with our soul's purpose on a deeper and more personal level. So we're taking what we learned when Venus was conjunct Mercury just the day before, we're taking that information and we're integrating it on a deeper level. This is really going to be reflecting how, in order to move forward on our highest path, indicated by that trine to the North Node, we really need to adjust the script of what we've told ourselves about these Venus points of view that I just shared, reflecting upon our self-worth, our self-value, and how maybe we need to challenge the way we've thought about that. And that would be represented by Mercury, and potentially reprocess this in a way that will be more aligned with ourselves, or at least start to reprocess it. As we are going to be in this Venus retrograde for 40 days, and Mercury is going to be working with Venus quite a lot through this period. And actually, the last 10 days of the Venus retrograde, Mercury is going to be joining Venus and going retrograde. So we will have plenty of planets in retrograde at that time. We'll be in a really big reflection stage, as is indicated by any retrograde, looking at things differently. So right now, these connections that Mercury's making, they're going to be things that we will potentially be reflecting upon more deeply when Mercury goes into its own cocoon, its own retrograde period. We also on Friday have Mercury in the evening moving into the sign of Virgo. And Mercury is very happy in the sign of Virgo, where it is exalted. And this is an opportunity for us to really get our Virgo qualities online. We're going to find that we're communicating much better with Mercury being in its home sign of Virgo, one of its home signs. It also is the ruler of Gemini. And all of our Mercurian qualities are going to be amplified. Logic will definitely have more of the mental space to sort things out. And of course, Mercury will be joining Mars in Virgo, who's already been there. And we now have our energy as well as our mental space aligned in the sign of Virgo. So we could really accomplish a lot. We could really check some boxes of things that have needed to get done. And this could very much be things that have that strong Virgo quality of needing to, have our attention to detail. We're going to have the capacity to really meet these goals. So if you have any projects that have been lingering in the background that have needed to be done, and you've been putting them off because, gosh, it's summertime and I really don't want to be serious and my mind is not on this, this is a great time to use it to accomplish a lot of those projects. Now again on Friday, we are going to have the North Node in Aries squaring Pluto. Please reflect back to what I said for the Tuesday energies. It's basically the same regarding the healing of these psychological wounds, these generational wounds, things that have been holding us back during this time. And on Saturday, we have a 3-hour, almost 4-hour moon void, of course, period that will be happening later in the evening and could very much affect the energies of Sunday, giving us more of that lazy Sunday vibe. Probably not going to be a time to be endeavorous and try to get things done. Moon and void is a pretty common occurrence. I usually don't mention it unless it's 3 hours or more, and it's about a 4-hour moon void, of course, but it's when the moon is not making any connections, any aspects with other planets. And basically, we want to follow the lead of the moon, so there's not a whole lot going on, so to speak. And we also do not want to plan a whole lot, because a lot of times when we do, and we're under the influence of a moon void, of course, it can cause plans and things to come to naught or not to happen the way that we want them to, because there's really not the energy to support it. Now, I wanted to end actually by talking about a question that came in last week regarding the Venus retrograde. And the question was about starting a business during Mercury retrograde and why this is unadvisable. We generally don't want to do things that embody the nature of the planet that is retrograding during the time of a retrograde. And Venus covers things like relationships. So generally speaking, we don't want to start relationships or, plan a wedding during Venus retrograde. Venus covers finances or financial decisions. So something that is business related would probably not be a good idea under the Venus retrograde. The reasoning behind this is because if you consider that everything has a birth chart, then if we were to create a birth chart for the moment you created your business and you did that under a Venus retrograde, the Venus retrograde would be present in the birth chart of your business, which is a very difficult aspect to have for a business because Venus does rule over financial things, right? So if you can avoid it, of course, that is why it's really good to avoid it. It's sort of setting things up to be more challenging and difficult. And if it is avoidable, then avoid it. So you don't have that difficulty going forward. Because we can do something called a progress chart, and we can sort of look at when it is in time that that planet will go out of retrograde. You could see that it could be within months, it could be within years, but that indicates a major shift in whatever energy that planet dictates happening for you. So if you do a progress chart and you notice that you have a Mercury retrograde, for example, in your natal chart, and then as you do the progress chart, you realize, oh wow, by the time I was, a year old, it was no longer retrograde. You may notice, you might be able to look back and say, oh, something did significantly change where my family moved, and make these kind of connections with that situation of having a retrograde planet. Thank you guys for being with me today. I'll be back with a podcast on the energies around the Venus retrograde, and I hope you all have a fabulous week. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. And if you have any comments you'd like to leave, I enjoy hearing from you and would love to communicate with you in the comments to hear how the energies are landing for you. And if you happen to have a friend who you think will enjoy this podcast, please do share it with them. I'm back every Monday with your weekly overview on my Substack account at courtneyingham.substack.com.